Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I would like to say, as always, thank you for joining me. Chess Audiobooks is on leechess.com, as many you know already from playing me. And also on chess.com, same name is on YouTube and also on Instagram and Twitter. All right. So before I begin, please hit that thumbs up button. That's the most important thing you can do. And of course, consider subscribing. Today we are going to be talking a little bit about space and also this idea of good and bad bishops. So I hope I can do this subject some service. So with the white pieces on the bottom there, you have Hungarian Grandmaster Joseph Pinter, um, who very strong player and chess writer, still alive, born November 1963. And he won the Hungarian Chess Championship twice in 78 and 79. And he is known for a brilliancy against his compatriot Leos Portish, um, in the Hungarian Championship in 1984. All right, he became a GM in 1982, and his peak was about 2600 or so. So very strong player. And with the black pieces, you have former world champion, well known by many, Mikhail Tal, who was champion in for a brief period of time in 1960, and then he lost a rematch in 1961 to Botvinnik. In this particular position, is white to move. So Joseph Pinter has the turn here, and analyzing the position, it looks very drawish, symmetrical. Here, the rooks have just been exchanged off on e8, the last set of rooks. So Tal's last move was king takes e8. So basically, in the features of this position, we have the same colored bishops here. And so white kind of takes the approach of fixing the enemy pawns on the same color as the bishop, right? It's a good strategy in order to limit the scope of Tal's light square bishop on c8. So reasonable plans will be like, for instance, like f4, right, to fix the black pawn on f5, and moves like h4 doing the same thing, and trying to keep those pawns fixed on the light squares. All right. Another reasonable idea, of course, is c5, doing the same thing on the queen side to white. g3 is another idea, prohibiting the advance f4 and f5. All right, so that's like the basic idea in the position for both sides. Of course, black wants to have a quote-unquote good bishop, so his idea is, if it was his move, maybe he would play a move like c5 and fix the white pawns on the queen side on those light squares, a2, b3, and c4, right? And therefore, he can, look forward to attacking them maybe at a later point. So this is like a well-known strategy in chess. All right. So that's a little piece about the bishops and the color complex there. The next thing I wanted to talk about is space. We often associate space in chess with a good thing, right? We say he has an advantage because he has the bishop here and he has more space, or he has more space on the king side or more space on the queen side, right? We never think of space in negative terms. However, space is, I think, should be looked at like an isolated pawn. Is that depending on the other factors connected to it, space can be good or bad. And this is kind of the underlying idea behind the modern openings, which don't posit that you should put your pawns in the center at the beginning, right? Openings such as on 1g3 or 1b3, Nimzo Indian defense, things like the Caro-Kann French defense, right? That they allow the other side to put their pawns in the center, and the argument is that they're putting them there prematurely. All right. So we're gonna get into this game, and then hopefully that clears up what I'm trying to cover here a little bit. Okay. So Pinter played this move C5. Very, very natural move. Like I said, he has a light square bishop, and he wants to fix Tal's pawns also on the light squares, as Tal has a light square bishop also. And you can see when these pawns are here like this, it limits the scope of this bishop, right? So the bishop can't utilize these squares. Same thing here. You see um, this complex of pawns here in the light squares, limiting the scope of the bishop, of course. If white could move again, his next move would probably be maybe like f4, okay? And again, just keeping the padlock on this bishop here, all right? So I guess the question is, should you start off with c5 or should you play f4 first? So c5 was chosen. And like I said, it's very reasonable because, say, if Tal could move, he might play c4 himself, or c5 himself, I'm sorry, and fix these pawns on their squares. So Pinter played c5, all right. Tal played f4 for reasons mentioned previously. If Tal doesn't play f4, say he doesn't understand what's going on in the position, he plays king e7 for example. It allows white to pursue his ideas. Again, he can play f4 here, he can play g3, but the idea of fixing this bishop behind these pawns, right, creating a quote-unquote bad bishop is important. Anyway, Tal played f4. Pinter played g3. Tal played the move f3. If he plays, exchanges here is nothing for white. It's actually good for white because after f takes g3, then the king will have a free diagonal to just get in the game. All right. So if we have to take anything, make any demerits of white's position, give demerits to white's position, we have to say maybe the king is a little bit far away from the action. All right. Tal's king is like right in the center. So even though both kings are on the back rank, Tal's king is closer to the center. All right. So g3 is played, and then f3. Right. So it's interesting because Tal has a light square bishop, yet all of his pawns except the a pawn are on light squares. So it seems counterintuitive. All right. Another thing I want to mention again is that, okay, black has more space on the king side. White has more space on the queen side. All right. So we're going to see how space can be good and bad and why it is so. So h4 by Pinter. Now I have highlighted all the squares that Tal has, all the pawns that are on light squares that Tal has. So you can see all of his pawns except the a7 pawn are on light squares, right? So this bishop on f1 should have a field day, and that's Pinter's plan. He fixes the pawns on light squares. He's going to play bishop d3. He wants to attack the g5, g6 pawn, but of course it can be protected by f7. And while that's being protected, then he'll play a move like bishop to e4. All right. So basically, white is following this old school methodology, this adage that, hey, fix the pawns on light squares, attack them with your better bishop. Okay. So he's trying to enhance his prospects, hinder his opponent's prospects. So sounds great. King e7. Again, the king of Tal's king is better, and he starts bringing this king to more closer to the center of the board. And remember, that's what I was saying that stands out, is that Tal's king is closer to the center and therefore has access to this far advanced c pawn. All right, remember, black has more space on the king side, white on the queen side. Bishop d3, so there's the attack. All right. So instead of Tal being drawn away from the attack on the C pawn by playing a move like King F7, Tal just plays Bishop F5, offers the trade of bishops. Okay, this would be a good trade for Black because after all, the after the trade of bishops, Black could easily get to the C pawn. So for example, Bishop takes F5, G takes F5, and then the King would just walk over to the C pawn. Again, you see the downside of the White King being so far away. So Bishop C4, right, keeping the bishops on the board, but keeping the king out of this square right here. All right, these two squares the king cannot cross. So King F6, King F1. Pinter starts bringing his king into action, and now you can see the problem here from this pawn. All right, King E5. So now Tal's king is right in the center, and there's no way to stop king from getting to this pawn here. So King E1, and now King B4. All right. So again, to reiterate, it's like although Black's pawns are statically weak, air quotes, hope you can see the air quotes, they're easily defendable. So it's kind of like, are they really weak? And when I say statically weak, I mean just the fact that they're all on light squares. White has a light square bishop. But at the end of the day, if you can't attack the weakness, it's like really effective weakness. Okay? So again, you can see all the Black's pawns are easily defendable. Okay? Why are they defendable? Because Black's pieces are well placed. And we can't say Black's bishop is bad either because his bishop is not being hindered by the pawns. Okay, if anything, okay, the bishop doesn't have a full scope and full range because of the pawns, but we can't say that the bishop is weak or the bishop itself, is bad. Okay, King B2. And now Tal plays A5 instead of just grabbing that pawn. He could grab the pawn and still be ahead here. But it gives White a little bit of counterplay. I had to like King E3 and stuff like that. Although, like I said, Black is still better at the B5. But Tal just plays A5. And now Bishop F7. Okay, so Pinter's trying to have, attack these pawns. But again, the bishop is well placed in protecting the G pawn. So King takes C5. Now Tal just wins the pawn unceremoniously. Okay, so let's take some time to talk about the bad side of having the extra space. Okay, and I'm talking about pawns in particular, and this applies to the opening stages of the game too. Anytime where there's pawns involved, when you decide that you're going to take more space in the opponent's position, it's very important that those pawns are protected or you have a way to protect them in the near future. And that's kind of what's going to determine whether your space grab is going to be good or bad. If you take space early on, that's fantastic. But then if your position starts to crumble and you can't protect the pawns, then it's bad. They just become targets. So you can see here what happened is Pinter grabbed the space with C5, which is fantastic. Okay, you have more space. But then at the end, he wasn't able to hold on to his space again, so he wound up just losing material. All right. Now, conversely, on the other side of the board, Tal's grab space playing all the way to F3. But notice White is never able to attack it. So in this case, the space is good because he grabbed the space and is able to maintain it. So when you're thinking about gaining space, what you gotta do is make sure you gotta weigh the pros and cons and make sure that you're able to keep that space or protect the pawn, right? And we're talking about pawns here. You want to make sure you can protect it. Now, if you can't protect it, right, you shouldn't take the space. Now, of course, if you can trade that for another advantage, for example, like you give up the pawn for like the exchange, there's other factors. But just speaking purely grabbing space with the pawns, you want to make sure that you can protect it. All right, and we'll go back and I'll show you what Pinter probably should have done, which was a little more conservative. All right, but anyway, the pawn drops, king c3, b5, a3, b4, and now Tal is just up a pawn. Pawn starts advancing, bishop e4, and notice how powerful the bishop is. Even though the pawns are on the light squares, Tal's bishop is on a great defensive job right on e4. There's no way that Pinter can attack those pawns on the light squares. Bishop a6, bishop d5, highlighting the weakness on b3 there. King c2, king e5, bishop b5, and Tal makes this excursion over to the king side, but then he's gonna decide, find the best plan, most efficient plan. Bishop e4, king b2, king e5, and he comes back, king d5, and he decides just, hey, all I got to do is push the c pawn. So bishop e6 comes again. We're kind of in the same position. King c2 and now c4. B takes b3. Great move by Tal. Zhuizhen, right? Like in between move. b3 check, and it's based on the idea that if king takes b3, then just simply king d3, because notice that the king on b3 is pinned, the pawn is pinned because of the bishop on e6. All right, so that gives the black king just this free access to go to f2 and start, chopping the pawns off, and then push the f3 down to promotion. This is why Pinter played king b2, so he's not affected by a pin. So king d3 anyway from Tal. c5, discovered check, right? Hope you can see that, right? Bishop is right here, so discovered check. But Tal is calculated very well, and he just plays king b2, c6, king e1, c7, and notice again the bishop is doing a great job defensively. King takes f2, bishop c4, of course trying to distract the bishop, from the square. Bishop g4, bishop d3, and now black can afford to, let those pawns go ahead. Now Tal is saying, hey, go ahead, take the pawn. I'm going to promote here. Bishop takes g6, f2, bishop takes h5, a last desperation move to distract the bishop from guarding the square, and then just simply f1 queen. And here Pinter resigned the game. All right, so you see a clear illustration on both sides of the board of space going right, a space grab going right, and a space grab going wrong. All right, and it's easy looking at this game to extract those principles that basically, if you're grabbing space with the pawns, you want to make sure those pawns are adequately defended. And that's why we can deduce from that this game that c5 was definitely incorrect, because where Pinter's king was, he had no way to adequately defend the pawn. All right, the king is still basically castled on g1. Tal's king is right there, and he just wasn't able to do it. So in hindsight, looking back, right, and post-mortem, we could play a move like f4. It's probably very drawish here. And notice that in this situation, the king, now the king could just come right out. You see? In other words, the space grab is defendable. Even though white is in his own territory, it's defendable. Right? It's justified. Also, of course, it hinders the bishop, right? The scope of the bishop. Play could continue like h4, for instance, right? King f2, and just some, fictional moves. And you see both sides kind of trying to just grind it out, and it probably, be like a draw. All right. White has his queen side pawns that are a little weak, air quotes, because they're on light squares. but black has his king side pawns that are a little weak. So that's probably how it could have gone. Another idea is G3, same idea is King E7, and again the white king is able to come to the middle of the board. And see, in this variation that I've chosen is that notice how Tal gets to play C5 here, but Pinter is able to lock Tal up on the queen side of the board. So this would have been a more healthy expression of each side going after their goals here. All right. So each side gains their space, but notice the pawns are defensible. And again, there's really nothing to be done here. And I just put some moves in, as an example. And again, that would be like drawers. So you can see each side, try to gain a little space, but you always make sure your pawns are defensible. So it's not just about gaining space. I know you hear that a lot. Oh, gain space, get space on the queen side, this and that. You got to remember, underneath that, you have to be able to defend. So now you can see C5. The problem with C5 is not no defense really to that pawn. And Tal making this brilliant move, F4. He starts gaining space himself, but the difference is he's able to defend, right? There's no real way for Pinter to get to this pawn. Effective way. All right. And as you see, the continuation of the game, and basically, for all intents and purposes, the game was over. So that was just like a brief insight, a little conversation about space. Hopefully that helps you get in those comments below. Please hit that thumbs up button if this was a good video for you. And also remember to check the links below. Support my channel, please, if you can. And there's always DVDs and books down there. And again, if you can't support the channel in that way, just hit that thumbs up button. That's a big way to promote my videos also. All right. So I'd love to hear from you guys, and keep the comments coming in and the support on the different channels, because I always get messages from guys on Lead Chess and chess.com. And that's pretty cool. Like, just random messages. People will be like, "Oh man, video content is great. I hope more people can see the videos, la la la." So that that makes me feel good. So yeah, that's about it. Like, come challenge me, play. I mostly listen, guys. I mostly play minute games and like 30-second games, minute games. Sometimes I'll play a longer game. Like, you gotta catch me. Like, sometimes I'll play a 10-minute or 15-minute game with like a 10-minute increment. Unfortunately, on chess.com, I ran into a lot of like cheaters, and I used to get those notices on my inbox, messages in my inbox from chess.com, like, oh, such and such has been suspended for cheating, because it's like anytime I play a long game, man, for some reason people are signing up. Usually newer people sign up and they want to use the engine, and so you wasting all that time playing against the engine, and it's crazy. And it's not fun at all. So sometimes, yes, I'll play a slower game, but a lot of times I'm playing, 1 minute, because listen, you could beat me in a minute with a robot, like, God bless you. You're going through all that effort to do that, but yeah, usually I play a minute, for like fast games. Sometimes I'll play 2 minutes, 3 minutes, but usually it's like fast games. So, one more thing I wanted to tell you too. Like, I know I'm rambling on a bit. This tournament right here with 1985, 1985 tournament that took place in Mexico. Taxco or Taco. I know you don't pronounce the X, but I can't remember how to pronounce it correctly. But it's spelled Taxco. So like Tahoe, like in Mexico. And this is one of 3 interzonal tournaments took place in 1985 to determine a future challenger for the world champion, who was, of course, Kasparov at the time. So what happened is, out of the 3 tournaments, in each tournament, four, the top four would be chosen, and then all those players would get together. So you would have a total of 12 players. Then they would play in the candidates. So you had, for instance, this Taxco tournament. You had tournament Bill and another one in Tunis, right? So the top four of each of those would come together. That's 12 players, and then you would have a candidates tournament, and then that's supposed to determine like who challenges for the world championship. So anyway, this resulted in the Montpellier tournament um, of 1985, which had 16 players because they had four more players seeded in somehow. Like it was weird. Like they had, they always have these different things. Like, oh, this player won last year, so he gets seeded in. So they wound up having 16 players, and we all know that Kasparov ended up being champion again. Somehow Karpov wound up playing. Maybe Yusupov played Karpov, and I can't remember how it went. I just remember that Kasparov remained champion. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys soon on the next one.